So going back to our first week and revisiting some of the material from those first lessons, and largely something that we also did in language arts as far as reading goes. Some of that overlap comes into play here, but those sort of skill sets that we start with as far as identifying supporting details, conclusions and inferences, those words in context, and reading well, and then just generally the idea of our strengthening our reading comprehension, which applies, of course, for language arts as well as social studies. So we'll see some of the some familiar text, and I will call on you guys to answer the questions here. There's only about 7 questions per unit review, so we'll probably move fairly quickly through them, but with the passages and everything, that'll slow us down a little bit. And I imagine about 3 is what we'll get through in the course of today's lesson. So let's start here. Reading and social studies unit quiz. If you guys want to go ahead and open that up and work through it as we're going through it, that would be fine. If you want to wait and just do that later, you can do that as well. If you want to save it for some practice down the road for review, that would be fine as well. But we want to go ahead and take a look and revisit some of these skill sets. So let's take a look here at our first set of questions. And this passage is one of those that was familiar. We'll go ahead and read through it here. So just thinking about this one particular unit in supporting details, drawing conclusions, making inferences, which is going to be our first question here. So which answer is a valid inference based on the implications of sentence 6? I'm going to go ahead and read the whole passage, but particularly when we get there, we'll revisit it before we answer the question. So excerpt from the meeting of July 4th for the Negro by Frederick Douglass. We talked about him a little bit, a speech given at an Independence Day celebration in Rochester, New York on July 5th, 1852. Well before the American Civil War that was largely fought over slavery and ending slavery. So we got about 13 years or so before we see slavery abolished nationwide in the country. So he says here, fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? Such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. This is the sentence that they want us to kind of focus on. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought light and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions, whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. My subject, then, fellow Americans, is American slavery. I shall see this day and its popular characteristics from the slave's point of view, standing there, identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine. I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on the 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or to the professions of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future. Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged in the name of liberty, which is fettered in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce with all the emphasis I can command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. But I fancy I hear someone of my audience say it is just in the circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists failed to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But I submit, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point is the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? That point is conceded already. Nobody doubts it. The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of laws for their government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of the slave. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia, which, if committed by a black man, no matter how ignorant he be, subject him to the punishment of death, while only 2 of the same crimes will subject a white man to the like punishment. What is this but the acknowledgement that the slave is a moral, intellectual, and responsible being? The manhood of the slave is conceded. It is admitted in the fact that Southern statute books are covered with enactments forbidding, under severe fines and penalties, the teaching of the slave to read or to write. When you can point to any such laws in reference to the beast of the field, then I may consent to argue the manhood of the slave. Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty, that he is the rightful owner of his body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? To do so would be to make myself ridiculous and to offer an insult to your understanding. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. Okay, so that's a fairly long speech. One thing I wanted to kind of point out here is that you might notice his use of commas. It's kind of all over the place since we just did that lesson. But part of that is likely the fact that, when you're giving a speech, there's going to be sort of different pauses. So he may be using those, sort of inserting those so he knows where to pause for like extra emphasis, not necessarily because it's, this is meant to be spoken. So in its structure, it'll look a little different. Not necessarily that those are correct uses of commas where he has them, but for his emphasis, that'll help him know where to pause and sort of draw things out. But anyway, so which answer is a valid inference based on the implications of sentence 6? So your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. So Mariama, what can we read between the lines with that particular sentence?
C. Douglas does not yet feel like he is one of the free men celebrating America's Independence Day.
Yeah, good job, right? So looking at that sentence one last time, right? He says, your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. So that distance is right, the freedom that one side actually kind of lives and has the privilege of experiencing, but he does not. Your high independence. So yeah, Douglas does not feel like he is one of the free men celebrating America's independence. Yeah, and as it says here, he feels separate from his allies, as if the rules that apply to white men still do not apply to him. We can infer that. We can infer that, you know, farther along, right, through the whole passage. That's one of the ideas there that's presented. Okay, next question. Okay, so which conclusion best sums up Frederick Douglass's message to his audience about the continuation of Black slavery? So let's take a look here at our conclusions, or say passage. Okay, so conclusion A says Douglass feels that his audience choose to remain ignorant. They know that Black people are still enslaved in the South, and yet they choose to celebrate freedom as if it were universally enjoyed by all Americans. Conclusion B, Douglass feels that many of the people in the audience are allies of convenience. He sees his white supporters as being more concerned with defeating the South than they are with the freeing of Black men, women, and children living in chains throughout the South. Conclusion C, Douglass is angry at his largely white audience for forcing him to give a speech on freedom and independence when he personally has experienced so little of either. He resents white people for their freedom. And then finally, conclusion D, Douglass wants his audience to understand that they are privileged compared to Black Americans. The freedoms that they enjoy and celebrate are not shared by Black Americans who continue to suffer under racism and slavery. Let's see, Levon, you want to give that one a try? What one of those conclusions do you think best sums up the message that Frederick Douglass is speaking there? Is Levon there? Okay. She's reading. C, conclusion C. We're going to take a look at that one again. I believe it's conclusion D. Let's see here. So conclusion C says Douglass is angry at his largely white audience for forcing him to give a speech on freedom and independence when he personally has experienced so little of either. He resents white people for the freedom. The conclusions here are kind of nuanced because there's ideas that are presented in each one of these conclusions to some degree in those passages. And yeah, certainly there is some of that, right? He's sort of frustrated that he's been, chosen to speak at this event. It probably goes a little over the top to say that he resents white people for their freedom. He wants them to know. So it's conclusion D, which a little broader and sort of encompasses everything. So Douglass wants his audience to understand that they are privileged compared to Black Americans, that the freedoms that they enjoy and celebrate are not shared by Black Americans who continue to suffer under slavery. So that really captures everything. And just to sort of review there, as far as conclusion B, Douglass feels that many of the people in the audience are allies of convenience. He sees his white supporters as being more concerned with defeating the South than they are with Black men, women, and children. So again, these sort of ideas are presented in different places, but to really sort of capture everything that is in that speech, conclusion D is the one that works best. So D, conclusion D. Yeah, so like this, one sentence, the blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. So this shows that Douglas wants his audience to understand that they live in a different America from him. And okay, so we also saw this before. So this is the two candidates running for like a city council position, and then we are looking at which of the following in our choices here best conveys the author's statement. So sort of summarizing what this author says about these two candidates. So quickly reading through here. The upcoming city council election will fill the empty position for District 2. The competing candidates are both new candidates who have never run for office, but both are well qualified. Juan Martin is a businessman who owns a chain of small supermarkets as well as a thriving local art store. Martin earned an MBA from the University of Oklahoma. He has 20 years of experience as a local business owner and is active in the Chamber of Commerce. While Martin's background is in business, Lila Vargas has a background primarily in social work. She earned a master's degree from the University of Texas. Her 12 years of experience as a social worker includes some business experience as well, since she founded a local shared kitchen which she has run for 4 years. The difference in the candidates' policy positions can be seen in their approaches to the planned JKC big box store. While both candidates are opposed to the current plan, their reasons differ. Martin recently wrote an article about the topic outlining his position. Martin's business background shows up in his views. He sees the details of taxes and business strategies. Martin's concerns are practical and money-based. He believes that the JKC store could greatly lower their property taxes, leaving the city with few benefits from their store. Vargas outlines her position on her website. In Vargas's time as a social worker, she is focused on helping poor communities build small local businesses. Her shared kitchen is part of that effort. Vargas opposes the JKC store, saying that it will hurt small business and take money away from the community. While both candidates oppose the current deal with JKC, Martin believes the city can renegotiate a better deal. Vargas has stated that she will oppose any plan for the store. The two candidates offer subtly different perspectives for the District 2 City Council seat. Okay, let's try Kate. So which one of these best conveys the author's statement here, what he's saying overall?
I'm reading the answers, so give me a little more time.
Sure, no problem.
I'll choose A.
Did you say A?
Yeah.
Since one of the candidates has social work experience, she's better qualified. So here it is both candidates qualify for the position, but come from different backgrounds and with different skills. So it's going to be this one here, C. Right, so this is also a good example of sort of unbiased sort of portrayal of two candidates, right? He doesn't offer much opinion about who he thinks necessarily would be best. It's pretty straightforward as far as reporting on their backgrounds, some of the opinions that those candidates have offered, not his own. So very well balanced between the two, and fairly unbiased there. So yeah, both candidates qualify for the position, but come from different backgrounds and different skills. Of course, one's has a business background, while one has more sort of a social working background. Okay. And let's see, Nilda, let's go to you here. Which of the following details does not support the author's statement?
I'm gonna read it.
Go ahead.
I think C.
So C, Martin recently wrote an article about the topic right here. That is correct. So, looking for supporting details, right? So, he leads in. This is more of a topic sentence than supporting details, right? So Martin recently wrote an article about the topic outlining his position. That's the topic of that paragraph. The supporting details then, right, are the fact that Martin's business background shows up in his views. He sees the details of taxes and business strategies. So, a couple things are coming into play here as far as, thinking about it. You have, right, looking at where those sentences fall in the paragraph can also help you, whether it's a supporting statement or like a topic sentence, right? In this case, number 11, that's a topic sentence. We're looking for things that actually support it, not the other way around. So the rest of those, so 12 and 13 obviously are in that same paragraph, so they're supporting details, while 6 and 8 are supporting details for that third paragraph. Well, 6 is another topic sentence, basically, and 8 is another supporting detail. But definitely here, Martin recently wrote an article is more of a topic, right? The author's statement is both candidates are qualified despite having different backgrounds. The sentence doesn't say anything about the candidate's qualifications or the differences between them, right? It's basically introducing that paragraph. So the rest of that information in the paragraph does support what he's saying about the two candidates. Okay, let's see. Identify the signal word. So we're moving to those context clues ideas. How do you define, how do you understand a word that you don't already know that well? So Mariama, right, this sentence, since Bethany was parked illegally, the police officer gave her a citation or ticket. So how do we sort of understand the word citation here? What will we choose?
I think it's D.
D, the signal word was, the context clue is an example. It's C. C. So the word we're looking for, in this case, the signal word is a lot of times will be like a conjunction or, like or and in particular. So that way, that there's sort of a comparison between the two words. In this case, that's going to be a synonym, right? Synonym are words that are closely related. Or have the same sort of definition. An antonym is going to be the exact opposite. So here, looking at that, so since Bethany was parked illegally, the police officer gave her a citation or ticket, right? So that's whatever you want to call it. You either want to call it a citation or you want to call it a ticket. Either or works there. So we know that a citation is basically getting written up a ticket for something. This is very specific. If I'm looking for context clues, I'm looking at the whole dang sentence, not just a signal word like or. Since Bethany was parked illegally, the police officer gave her a citation, right? That tells me what a citation is, right? She got smacked on the wrist for parking in the wrong place. She has to go now to court and pay her fine. So it's a ticket, right? So the signal word is or, and the context clue is a synonym. Yeah. And another context clue here. So the president vetoed the infrastructure bill, but signed the tax cut bill into law. Levon, how about giving this one a shot? What can we use for signal words and context clues here? For vetoed.
He said C.
Yeah, so the signal word is signed and the context clue is an antonym. So it's the signal word is but, and the context clue is an antonym. So if you're looking at, but as your context, or I'm sorry, your signal word, then you know it's going to be contrast, right? Everything after that word but is in contrast to the beginning of the sentence. So or, right, is basically, either or. So there's, an extension there. There's common ground, and also likely will sort of serve that purpose. But you can count on having contrast. So here, and the word we're looking for as far as a context clue is vetoed, right? So it's a verb. The president vetoed the infrastructure bill. So think also, sort of some of our language arts rules, right? We're going to have two independent clauses, but signed the tax cut bill into law, right? So signed is going to be sort of that opposite of vetoed. So if he vetoed that, meaning that, if we're looking for the context to understand the definition, veto meaning rejected, right? Not accepting that. He's passing it back to or pushing it back onto Congress. Signed the tax cut bill into law means that he accepted that one, right? So he agreed with it and he signed it. So vetoed in that case, we understand then with the context is an antonym for sign, right? Or accepting. So the signal word is but, and the context clue is an antonym, largely based on our signal world because it's contrast. There's I was trying to think of, I think it was Game of Thrones. There's a great line, I think in maybe the first season, where it's like something, two characters are talking and they say something like, my father or whoever always told me that everything before the word but is BS, right? Because when you put the word but, that's taking it to the extreme, but when you get to the word but, you're adding contrast, right? So whatever you say before that, but, and then this is what I really mean. So there's the contrast for you. Okay, and then another one here. Let's see. So based on the prefix root and suffix, so something else we talked about, right? Root of a word, what are we putting on either the beginning of that word, right? Affixes either go at the beginning or they go at the end. So based on the prefix, root, and suffix of the underlined word here, what does the word probably mean? Kate, you want to give that one a try? So we're looking for nonsense. The speaker used a lot of science jargon. So to many of us, it sounded like nonsense.
I would say B, something that doesn't seem to make any sense.
I like how they basically use the same word in that sentence to tell you what the definition of the word is. Something that doesn't seem to make any sense, right? That's nonsense. And again, we look for particular clues, contrast and things like that. But also other words that we might be more familiar with. The speaker used a lot of science jargon. So, jargon tends to be like technical speak. If you're, in a certain field of study or something like that, that's what that means. So looking at the rest of that sentence, so to many of us, it sounded like nonsense. Nonsense meaning that, hey, that didn't make any sense. In this case, with that root word sense, right, we have a pretty good understanding of what the word sense means. And then we add non to it, right? We know that's basically going to be the opposite. We have those list of affixes, which when we get to a point, I'll start putting that stuff back on Google Classroom again. Yeah, so the prefix non means without. So without sense, the word literally means something that is without any sense. Okay, and that is the...
Congratulations. You've earned a perfect score on this unit.
All right.
And I use the word earned because it's your hard work that made you successful.
We'll keep going here. So that was reading and social studies. The next one, understanding context and point of view. So let's take a look here. And I don't know, the way things are going, we might only get through this one. So we'll see. We might be doing this a day or two more. Okay, understanding context and point of view. So let's see what we have here. So historical context, and we have a passage here. So thinking about the idea of historical context, which of the following of these choices best describes the historical context of this speech? So what we want to do, first off, always look at the title, President Kennedy's Cuban Missile Crisis Speech. And here we go. To halt this offensive buildup, a strict quarantine on all offensive military equipment under shipment to Cuba is being initiated. All ships of any kind bound for Cuba from whatever nation or port will, if found to contain cargoes of offensive weapons, be turned back. It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union. I call upon Chairman Khrushchev to halt and eliminate this clandestine, reckless, and provocative threat to world peace and to stable relations between our two nations. He has an opportunity now to move the world back from the abyss of destruction. My fellow citizens, let no one doubt that this is a difficult and dangerous effort on which we have set out. No one can foresee precisely what course it will take or what costs or casualties will be incurred. Many months of sacrifice and self-discipline lie ahead. Months in which both our will and our patience will be tested. Months in which many threats and denunciations will keep us aware of our danger. But the greatest danger of all would be to do nothing. So that is from, again, John F. Kennedy, and that's at NARA, National Archives and Records Administration. And it was initially given on October 22nd, 1962. So thinking about the context here, Nilda, let's give it a try here. What is the historical context of this speech?
One moment.
Sure.
D.
President Kennedy is responding to a Soviet nuclear threat against the Republic of Cuba. So it's B, President Kennedy is responding to a Soviet buildup of nuclear missiles in the Republic of Cuba. They were allies. Cuba, communist country, basically a socialist country, aligned with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. And it is the closest we ever come to nuclear annihilation. Those were 14 days of some scary, scary stuff. In 1962, we were going to basically blockade. This Nautica is understanding context and point of view. That is the next one after reading and social studies, reading and social studies. So we were going to embargo basically or blockade because we found through some YouTube flight. Well, we had aerial photos of what seemed to be missile sites being prepared in Cuba, and some missiles there without warheads, but there seemed to be missiles, and so there was some, real serious tension between us and the Soviet Union because, of course, Cuba is located basically 90 miles from Florida. The position of those missiles would, be able to strike most of the southern United States. So tensions were high. Later on, we found out that there were actually nuclear warheads with those missiles in Cuba, but cooler heads prevailed and they were removed eventually. This is part of the problem I have with the way Essential Ed teaches stuff. And I will talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Cold War in more detail next week to give you more context. Reading one passage from a speech given by John F. Kennedy doesn't really give you all of the context that you need for that and understanding what's going on. But President Kennedy, yes, is responding to a Soviet buildup of nuclear missiles in the Republic of Cuba. And he also mentions Khrushchev. That was Nikita Khrushchev, who was the premier of the Soviet Union, who was just a nasty little guy. Very aggressive. He was the leader of the Soviet Union after Joseph Stalin. Anyhow, going on, how has the author's historical context likely affected his purpose and point of view? So the author is John F. Kennedy, right? President John F. Kennedy, President of the United States, 1962. So Mariama, how has the author's historical context likely affected his purpose?
I think it's C.
C, the president primarily wants to put the Soviet Union on notice, warning them against the attack. So that is a big part of the purpose, but he did also want to inform the American public of the threat. So it's twofold. He did want to intimidate the Soviets. He did want to put pressure on them, but also inform. So yeah, C is not a bad choice, but it doesn't quite capture everything here as far as what he wanted to achieve with that speech. Yeah, Kennedy is primarily addressing the American public regarding the threat, but he also refers to the Soviet Union and what they should do to de-escalate the situation. Okay. And so now remember, we talked about different sort of propaganda techniques. So card stacking, testimonial, glittering generalities. So this passage here, let's take a look. Fun stuff. Stars and Bars Grill. I tell you what, if there's one thing my pop taught me, it's that there's nothing more American than a good steak. And there's no grill more American than the Stars and Bars 4-burner gas grill. Enjoy the tender, juicy meat that comes from 70 years of American grilling. Stars and Bars, one bite, you'll say, goodness gracious, that's some good grilling. Ribs, chicken, brisket, pork, even an ear of corn, if that suits your needs, whatever you got to grill, the Stars and Bars 4-burner gas grill is up to the challenge. The American grill for the American backyard. Pick one up today. So fitting, right? Because we're almost at the 4th here next week. So let's see. Levon, you want to give that one a shot? Which of those propaganda techniques, card stacking, testimonial, glittering generalities, or transfer, do we see here?
Mr. Matt, could you read it one more time? I'm sorry, I'm at work and I don't have it pulled up.
Okay, yeah. So basically it's sort of like an advertisement here. So it says, I tell you what, if there's one thing my pop taught me, is that there's nothing more American than a good steak. And there's no grill more American than the Stars and Bars 4-burner gas grill. Enjoy the tender, juicy meat that comes from 70 years of American grilling. Stars and Bars, one bite, and you'll say, goodness gracious, that's some good grilling. The kind of get it from the first paragraph. I don't think I need to read the second one. So is that card stacking? Is it testimonial, glittering generality, or transfer?
Testimonial.
So this one was kind of tough for me. It's actually transfer.
Card stack.
Yeah. So what they're doing here, as I'll explain here, is taking a good feeling, right? So American patriotism, and we're thinking about July 4th and cooking out and everything, and transferring that onto the product, right? So everything there, they want to turn your patriotism, like it says, into a purchase, right? All those good feelings, all those good vibes about, just American this and that, heck yeah, patriotism, red, white, and blue, and go buy this grill. Right. That's what they're kind of doing there. So yeah, it's transfer. Now we're looking at the same passage again. So that same, I'll tell you what, if there's one thing my pop taught me, it's that there's nothing more American than a good steak. So Kate, what other type of propaganda technique are we using here? Is it plain folks? Is it name calling? Is it bandwagon, or is it glittering generalities?
I think it's the glittering generalities.
Glittering generalities. So this one is plain folks, right? And the way that you can always point that out, and this is what I was looking for in that first one. I thought that was going to be one of the options that they had in the first go around, but it's that sort of aw shucks, I'm just a simple guy who loves my grill kind of message there, right? And that's expressed through the language that they use or how they've written it and this kind of slang, right? So I tell you what, tell ya is not a word, right? That's slang. And then if there's one thing my pop taught me, so, another word, slang for your dad, your father. So that sort of, plain folks kind of, good feelings, simple, sort of American life. That's really encompassed here with that idea of plain folks. And I've mentioned this too, right? You will see that particularly when it comes to politics. Every politician will claim to be a Washington outsider, right? Look at, particularly we got through the Republican primary. So from, I don't know, sometime last year, all through the winter, you turn on your TV and whoever it was going to drain the swamp, right? He's going to DC and he's, fighting for you and all this stuff. But every Republican candidate was talking about how, they're sort of an outsider. And that kind of connects to the idea of plain folks, right? That you're not part of sort of the DC bureaucracy. Right now, Tim Ryan, who is the Democrat candidate, watch an ad, you'll notice this, and he's trying to out-Trump the Republicans, which is funny, okay? And I'm not talking about, what he's saying is legitimate. And, he's talked about, sort of like bringing back manufacturing jobs and stuff like that, fighting China on, this and that, what have you. That's fine. You will never see Tim Ryan in any of these commercials that I've seen so far wearing a suit. He's always got like his sleeves rolled up. He's got like, just a regular jacket on. He might have like a dress shirt on or something, but it's kind of like a button. He's got sleeves rolled up, or he's wearing jeans. And that's all, strategic to connect him with that common person, the common person that's going to vote. And it is a good strategy for him in a state like Ohio, because like I said, he has to out-Trump the Republicans, right? J.D. Vance, who's the Republican nominee, is endorsed by Trump. There's going to be, very similar messaging as far as like, combating DC and all of that. And Tim Ryan has put that into his messaging to hopefully, sort of win votes for him and pull away from J.D. Vance. But that's that idea. I'm connecting with the simple folks of America, right? That average Joe, the working class, just, and, trying to relate sort of to, that sort of simple idea. So now Andrew Spacey, is Andrew Spacey a biased source of information for the foot friend shoe? So we saw the foot friend shoe before, and I believe, if I recall, Andrew Spacey is a chiropractor. Andrew Spacey is a chiropractor with a practice in Los Angeles. He spent the last 3 months trying out our foot friend shoe, right? So a strong foundation. This is basically an advertisement for the foot friend shoe. We don't really stop to think about how much we use our feet. They carry our weight wherever we go and whatever we do every day, all day. That's why our choice of shoes is so important. I can't tell you how many patients I've had who suffered from leg, hip, and back pain due to poor arch support from their choice of footwear. Your feet are the foundation of your body. A bad foundation can cause health issues all the way up your spine. Foot friend shoes have the arch support of an engineering marvel. My arches have never felt so secure. I'm on my feet all day, but thanks to Foot Friend's patented memory foam padding, I feel as though I'm walking on a cloud. Before Foot Friend, I couldn't wait to get off my feet. At the end of the day, now, thanks to Foot Friend's innovative design, I can play basketball with my son after a long day at the office. Foot Friend has helped me be the father I always hoped to be. Foot Friend provided me a pair of their shoes in exchange for my honest review. Thanks, Foot Friend, Andrew Spacey. So, Nilda, what do you think here? Is Andrew Spacey a biased source of information?
Yes, I'm gonna read it really quick here.
Sure.
I think it's C.
C, not biased. Spacey's the authority for judging the shoe's impact on the spine. So he could be seen as an authority, because he works in a field that would be related to, healthy feet and joints. But it is possibly biased. So B, Spacey could make a good, judgment based on his experience, based on his profession about a shoe. But the problem is he's paid for that review, right? He says there at the end, Foot Friend provided me a pair of their shoes in exchange for my honest review. So, can't necessarily, that causes a conflict of interest, as it says, right? If somebody's getting paid, if they're receiving free stuff and all of that, you have to be careful. A lot of people, reviewing things, Instagram influencers today, YouTube channels, right? They get tons of free gear. They get gifts. And it's B there. So it's possibly biased. Spacey accepted payment for his review. So there's a conflict of interest. And that's something to be, cautious about. He's actually fairly straightforward in mentioning that. So, that's, they don't even have to tell you that they've gotten paid to, make an endorsement here or something like that. So he's sort of straightforward or forthcoming with that information, but you can't necessarily trust it because there is a conflict of interest there. And then next, so which of the following best evaluates the purpose of Spacey's product review? So Mariama, why don't you give that one a try? What is the purpose here of his product review?
It's C.
Spacey's product review.
Spacey's-
Yeah, sounds more like an ad. He wants to convince the reader to buy the shoe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it even, you can tell because it sounds like it's coming from the company. So, the stuff in italics there, Andrew Spacey is a chiropractor with a practice in Los Angeles. He spent the last 3 months trying out our footprint shoe. So this sounds like it's something that would, maybe be in a magazine ad or, on their website. So that's something else that kind of lends itself to maybe some bias there, is that it's not independent, right? It's not you going to Consumer Reports, which is always independent. That's the best place to get reviews on things. This is definitely sort of supported by, and as a result, certainly sounds more like an advertisement. So, yeah, wants to raise awareness about the role. Product review sounds more like an ad. He wants to convince the reader to buy the shoe. Yeah, and again, some of that language he used, glittering generalities and just the hyperbole, engineering marvel, walking on a cloud. It sounds like they've reinvented footwear. So again, yeah, that type of language would also make you suspicious. And so which of the following authors, so thinking about credibility here, which of the following authors is most qualified to discuss the topic of parking enforcement? Kate, would you like to take a look at those? Tell me which one would be the best, most qualified to discuss that topic, parking enforcement. Looks like
Erin Hill, parking enforcement officer of 7 years, author of The High Price of Convenience.
yeah, right. So somebody working directly in the field, parking enforcement, not always our favorite people, right? If you get a parking ticket. Yeah, so Erin Hill, parking enforcement officer, 7 years, author of The High Price of Convenience. Okay, so yeah, he's basically the authority, right? He understands what's involved there. And I always mention here, he doesn't necessarily automatically eliminate, like the police detective or an urban planner or the English lit major, or graduate. It's based more on what they say. But as far as looking at credentials, and just firsthand, this person, automatically has the experience. Daniel Scott, Alvin Powers, Kinjo Aya, they all may have something credible to say, but you'd have to look at what they write, right? You have to see if they use sound logic. You're going to have to look at their evidence, right? You look at their argument. But first, just on the basis of first impressions, you would say Aaron Hale, as a parking enforcement officer, has the best credentials there. Okay.
Congratulations. You've earned a perfect score on this unit. And I use the word earned because it's your hard work that made you successful. Take a moment to congratulate yourself and think about this unit. What have you learned? What helped you succeed? How can you apply your learning? When you're ready, click Submit to get back to the homeroom.
So considering how long it's taken, it took us about an hour almost to get through 2. I won't push our luck by doing the next one because it's back into analyzing events and ideas and things. So there'll be some long passages there as well. So just sort of recap as far as what we looked at today. Those ideas about inferences, conclusions, summarizing, right? Getting the main details, main ideas, and supporting details out of a piece of text. And then we followed that up with point of view and context. So context, I will be adding, with some more history. We're going to be connecting the dots starting next week. We'll go ahead and we'll do some more review tomorrow because there's several more to get through. I think we could probably get through all 3 tomorrow because some of that's going to be like visual data and stuff. There won't be as much text involved. But yeah, so thinking about, point of view, opinion, credibility, all those things that we talked about early. And of course, they build on later lessons, right? This all sort of stacks on top of each other to evaluate what we're reading. That is the primary goal here, asking questions about what we read. What are the main details? What is the supporting details? What inferences can I make from it? And rolling that into things like we do with language arts. What is the purpose of the author? What purpose does the author have in writing this? Who is the audience? All that is relevant. So any questions on the 2 reviews today? Okay, so let's go ahead and take about a 10-minute break.
Yes, Mr. Mark.
Yeah.
It's about this propaganda, the definitions of that, like card stacking and the other ones.
Oh, so like the other example or the other types?
Yes.
Let me put those up on, let's see, card stacking. Let me think. Card stacking. I was having trouble sort of recalling that one. Oh, yeah. So that was when, what was the example they used? Oh, I think they used like a soda or something, right? And comparing like 2 energy drinks or something, and you sort of paint one in a better light, but it was because it was like a different size, right? So it's like this only has like 200 calories, this one has 400 calories, but the one that they're comparing is half the size. So yeah, basically sort of like manipulating the information so that one side looks better than the other, right? And I also sort of mentioned that's sort of a cherry picking, sort of idea as well. So I'm just going to pick out all the great things about this product compared to this other product that doesn't have like the same thing. So that's card stacking. Transfer, right, was that idea that like really sort of based on emotion and feelings, transferring this idea from like the grill, right? So this patriotic idea, 4th of July coming up on all this stuff, get this stars and bars grill. What were some of the other ones we saw? Plain folks, of course, which we talked about. Bandwagon, right, which was the idea of everybody's doing it, you should too. you know, like showing, you know, this number of people enjoy, you know, doing this activity or buying this product. So that's, you know, bandwagon. When everybody else is doing it, why aren't you doing it too? Kind of related to transfer a little bit. And I think those were the major ones, if I remember. So yeah, I'll go back through and see if there was another one or two maybe outside of that, but I will also put those in Google Classroom with some definitions as well. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So let's go ahead. We'll go to about 1:30 for a break. Language arts is probably going to be fairly quick. It's just a lesson on certain spelling rules. So I will see you guys back at 1:30. All right. Bye.